Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Boss Battle podcast. I'm your host James, and with me today I've got Chris.
Hello.
And Carl.
Hello.
So guys, let's get straight into it. What have you been watching or playing this week? I'm going to go to Chris first.
This week I concluded the series Billions, which I think was about 14 parts. I'm sure you've probably seen the trailers on Sky Atlantic. It's got Damian Lewis from Homeland in it.
Damian Lewis, that was
and Paul Giamatti. I can't pronounce his surname. Giamatti, thank you, Carl. And it's broadly based on Damian Lewis's character, who's played the stock market very well to become a billionaire, and Paul Giamatti, thank you, is a lawyer who's after him, basically, and they happen to be intertwined by the lawyer's wife, who happens to work and be the psychiatrist for Damian Lewis and his firm. And it's actually really good. It's a bit of a slow burn. I know a few people that gave up on it because they couldn't get past episode 2, 3. I stuck with it and found it actually really good, quite rewarding. And I believe the second series in the pipe works.
I must admit, I saw the adverts for that and it just didn't do it for me. But there's a lot of TV that doesn't really interest me, so that doesn't come as a great show.
I think what I really enjoyed is the vicariously living through the billionaire and his lifestyle, and the house he supposedly lives in, and the lifestyle he has.
Like the voyeurism, then. Yeah,
it's just the idea of having that much money. So, for example, you'll like this, Carl. He likes the band Metallica, but because he's a billionaire, he has so much access to them that he goes and watches them rehearse in the empty stadium, has a beer with them before the show and then after the show, and the idea of having that much power and collateral with people you're interested in is quite good.
I was more of a Megadeth fan than a Metallica fan, but okay. The one thing that might have made that more interesting is if Paul Giamatti played the role that he played in Shoot 'Em Up and just started shooting people. That might have made it a bit more different.
Or Fred Claus, and he could have been Santa.
Yeah.
That would have been funny.
He shoots from the hip, verbally, but no.
Well, there you go.
Oh, wow. We're about 2 minutes in and that's already come out. Carl, what have you been playing or watching this week?
I have just started Narcos on Netflix, and I have mainly been playing NBA 2K17 because I love my American sports.
Cool. I've been playing FIFA 17, the early access trial, but I'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then the other thing I did was watched Ghostbusters, the rebooted version, so the all-lady Ghostbusters. Wow. I know you guys have all seen it.
I've not seen it.
You haven't seen it?
No.
Neither of you seen it? Okay, well, don't bother, because it's pretty poor.
It's got a decent write-up.
I watched the extended version, and I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad film. It's okay as a comedy about ghosts, but it's just not Ghostbusters. It's the same. It's those girls doing the same kind of humour we've seen them doing Bridesmaids and all the other sorts of films they've been together in.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit with the Ghostbusters franchise for me. There's no, other than the obvious Ghostbuster references when they're sort of calling back to the original, when they've got the logo and they've got the jumpsuits, and other than those obvious things, and the fact that they did kind of steal some of the original scenes and sequences from the first film, it just doesn't really feel like Ghostbusters. And I don't ever think I really look back on Ghostbusters as a comedy. That's never how I saw that film. It's funny. I wouldn't bracket it as a comedy. In a sort of true comedy sense, and this film tries to be a real comedy. Like everywhere, every time they turn around, it's a joke. Whereas in Ghostbusters, when Stay Puft or is having to go at New York, or Zool is on top of that building, you generally feel like there's some threat there. It's got a bit of action to it. Whereas this just doesn't carry that at all.
Yeah,
it's just jokey all the way through, and I didn't really enjoy it. I went in not expecting to be perfectly honest, and I hadn't really been looking forward to it. But they had decent reviews, so I thought it might be all right. Everyone from the original Ghostbusters film has a cameo in it, pretty much, and they're all terrible, and it just felt really disrespectful to the original. If you've any plans to watch it, tell me now before I tell you what those cameos were, because I would like to get your views on it.
I probably will watch it at some point, maybe.
It's not going to ruin your day if I tell you.
Okay,
it doesn't change the plot of the story. So Bill Murray is in it as a non-believer.
Right.
A very public TV face of a non-believer. Not for very long. Gets killed by a ghost. He's thrown out of a window. Not very exciting.
Okay.
And he's not very good. Dan Aykroyd is a taxi driver for all of about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Sigourney Weaver's in it in the post credits. It's not even in the film. She's in the post credits.
Okay.
As I think she's like an inventor, as a scientist, which is what they pitch Egon's replacement as, the blonde girl in it. I'm not sure what Holtzman, I think her name is. The receptionist is in it. She just works in a hotel. She's a receptionist in a hotel. Pretty uninspiring. And then Winston Zeddemore is probably the best cameo, and he appears at the very end, and he turns out to be the black lady's dad or uncle or something, I think he is. So
okay.
it's you don't see it coming until right at the very end when you realise he's the only member of the Ghostbusters who hasn't cameoed. Obviously Egon couldn't because he's dead. So I don't know, they felt a bit disrespectful to me. They weren't very funny cameos. Even they being in it wasn't very funny. Bill Murray, who's usually brilliant in everything he does, just wasn't. He didn't look he was interested, so I didn't like it.
What about Chris Hemsworth? What was his role?
He was
like?
probably the best bit, and he just plays an absolute dunce of a bloke who gets possessed at one point during the film. He's probably the best bit, and his bits are genuinely the funniest bits.
Okay.
A roast of it around that I was completely uninterested in, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was okay as a comedy, generic comedy, but it wasn't Ghostbusters. Even things like the siren on the car wasn't the Ghostbusters siren, and that disappointed me because that's such an iconic noise. You hear that, you go Ghostbusters. You know what it is. You know it's Ecto-1, and it didn't do that. So I've now watched a couple of films recently based on things I loved as a child, and they're disappointing me. It's just a sure sign I'm getting old, I think.
Probably.
Also this week, I have given up playing Pokemon Go now. I've opened it a couple of times during my week at work and then quickly closed it, realising I just can't be bothered. So that's dead for me now.
I think it's dead for a lot of people.
I finally conceded
it died for me probably about a month ago.
And then today, and you can check this out on YouTube, I finally laid my Kinect to rest, having received the Kinect adapter for the Xbox One S and seeing what a tangled, obvious mess it is, and Microsoft's lack of interest in it. So that was my week. Cool. In that case, before we get into our various topics for this week, of which we've got a few, I came across an article in the week, just by luck really, just browsing the net, about PS2 games. And this particular article was about the 15 most memorable PS2 games, but I thought I would narrow that down a little bit for speed and completely ignoring Chris on this topic because he's never owned a PS2. But Carl, I know you and me both had a lot of games on our PS2s back in the day. I wondered what your top 5 most memorable PS2 games were. Relatively quickly speaking.
Top 5.
If it's easier, I have a list of mine. I can do that first. What you
go on. You go first. While I have a think.
Okay, so for me, Time Splitters 2 was a great game. Remember sinking a lot of hours into that. Thoroughly enjoyed that, and that franchise has long since disappeared. Mm-hmm. Metal Gear Solid 2 is my obvious one, and I know you may have conflicting views on your favourite PS2 Metal Gear. For me, it was 2, and I remember, I don't think I've spent so much time in full games as I did in the demo of that game that came with Zone of the Enders. I spent so long playing that demo. Provo 6, it was the best version of Provo before they bolted up and I moved away from the franchise. Sunk a lot of hours into that. Final Fantasy X was a big one for me, probably the only Final Fantasy game I've ever played properly. Didn't finish, but played it most of the way through. And then Tekken Tag Tournament was the other one, so I'm putting a lot of hours into that when I first got it and loving that particular game. So those are my favourite, well, most memorable 5. Not necessarily my favourite or the best, but my most memorable 5.
Okay, so you're not going for the 5 countdown one?
No, just 5 games that you think of when you think of the PS2. So your most memorable, for bad or good. It could be for a very bad reason if there's a particular game that jumps out at you, but just thought I'd ask. One
would be, I can't remember them now because it's been that long, but one of the Ace Combat games was on the PS2, was really good. For people who probably won't know that because it's quite niche, is basically flying aeroplanes, blowing stuff up. Metal Gear Solid 2, obviously, and I'm going to throw Metal Gear Solid 3 in there as well because why not? Now, another 2. Probably Splinter Cell Chaos Theory.
Ooh, good one.
Because you put a lot of time in that.
You did put a lot of time into it.
One more.
Your thinking makes great radio, by the way.
I'm probably thinking of... There's probably loads, and I'm going to kick myself at some point, but I'm going to go with, I think, the last Tenchu that was on PS2.
Tenchu.
Tenchu, yeah.
There.
I do like my
There
Tenchus.
are loads, and I read that 15, and there was loads on there.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, a load of these games could be in my list, but some of mine weren't even in that list, and they were just my favourite. So, cool. Okay, then. Given that Chris hasn't talked for a few minutes now, let's go to you for your first topic, Chris. Which one are you going to choose?
I'm going to go with another box set. Well, it's not a box set. It's a 4-part drama that I watched recently. It's called
some TV then.
Yeah, it's called One of Us. I'm not expecting you to necessarily have heard of it. I just sort of stumbled across a review of it and it piqued my interest. It's from the same writers that wrote one of the best drama series I've seen in recent years, British particularly, called The Missing, which I don't think either of you saw.
Nope.
So it was, I think it was 8 parts. Had James Nesbitt as the lead role, and it was about a child that went missing in France, and then his search all those years later to try and find him because he still believed in his heart that he was alive. And it unfolded in the way the narrative worked, is it would show you in the present, where it's a few years late after the event. And then it'd flash back to what happened and intersperse. It was really interesting. And so partly because I've read up that it was from the same writers, I thought I need to watch this show, One of Us. So broadly, it's 4 parts, and it's a whodunit. And it's basically the basic premise is there's a murder at the start of it of some newlyweds who were childhood sweethearts, very recently married, and they grew up in an area of rural Scotland as next door neighbours, effectively, albeit in the farm community. So there's a bit of a distance between the houses, but they're next door neighbours. And so the 2 grieving families inadvertently come across the man the police have identified as the killer. Events unfold. And then over the 4 parts, you slowly learn more and more about how the newlyweds came to be murdered and which of the characters remaining were actually involved. It's got a really good cast. The twists worked, I think, for me, without seeming like too big a leap or seeming unrealistic. So it felt like quite a tight plot. I guessed which family member would be involved, but I didn't see the reason coming as to why. And I only really guessed, to be honest, because I recognise the actor as being quite prominent in other things and just suspected he might have quite a big role in it. And also, randomly, Adrian Edmonton of Bottom fame and The Young Ones, he plays a dramatic role, albeit quite a short one in this, but it's a very important role to the plot. And he was excellent in a dramatic role, so uncharacteristically straight-faced and actually quite dour in his demeanour because of what his character's been through. And carrying a lot of weight on his shoulders because of his past and things. And it was really interesting to see someone who I identified growing up as this brilliantly manic comic character playing it straight and playing it really well.
We watched some Bottom the other day, actually. Just randomly just put some Bottom on, and it's hilarious.
It was a favourite of mine as a kid, definitely.
So where can you watch that if you haven't
So
already seen it?
if you haven't already seen it, it's on BBC iPlayer. So it was ideal for me because BBC iPlayer allows you to download content offline. So for my commute to Bristol on the train, perfect. So I watched it unfold over 2 days on the train.
Perfect. If you had to give it out of a 5-star rating, what would you give it?
4. I wouldn't go as far as 5, but
4 still
impressive.
Pretty damn good for anything,
TV
really.
show.
Especially 4 parts. It's not like you need a lot of time to commit to watch it. So.
Okay. Carl, would you like to go next?
Yeah, my next topic is Hitman, more specifically the new Hitman that's come out recently. It's basically episodic. There's been 6 episodes so far, and I think there's going to be another season, but that's not actually been announced yet. There's obviously the 6 levels. The last level, which is going to be in Japan, hasn't actually been released yet, and there isn't a release date for it. But the first level was Paris, and that was released on the 11th of March. And the second level, and I might pronounce this wrong, was Sapienza. The third level was Marrakesh. 4th level was Bangkok. Then the 5th level was Colorado. There was actually like a little bit of a bonus thing in between it at the summer, which was called the summer bonus, which was just like another remake of the Sapienza and the Marrakesh, which just added different challenges and different content in there. Now it's obviously a full game that's been released episodically, and he's actually going to have a retail release in January as well. which is interesting. But it comes up with like as you're playing it, you obviously have the story content, but as you've finished each component, each level, you can actually go back and there's like weekly challenges. They're called elusive targets and escalation contracts. Basically, elusive targets are just another target that you've got to go and kill. And if you kill that target, you get varying things that he can use at a later level. Like a different costume, things like that. And if you get made by the target and he escapes, you can't redo it, so it's gone for good, which is, I think it's quite interesting. You've got to be careful on how you play it. And there's also escalation contracts, which basically gives you a set of tasks like break into a safe, kill this person, overhear a conversation, and what it does is it escalates and it gets harder each time, and that gives you the same sort of bonuses like different costumes and things like that, which I thought was pretty handy. Also, I've never actually played a Hitman game. I think I played one on the PlayStation for about 10 minutes, didn't really get it, didn't play it. But this one I've seen a few videos dotted here about it and that, and I actually want to give it a go because it kind of reminds me of Assassin's Creed, where like you blend into like crowds and you've got to find weird and wonderful ways to kill these people, and sometimes it can be quite funny. So I'm probably going to play that on stream at some point. I don't think it would be long, over a couple of days we'll be able to polish the 5 of the 6 episodes off anyway, and see how that goes.
So have you bought those already, or have you?
No, I will be buying those tomorrow.
And what's the cost? Is it like a bundle cost? I presume you're going to pay, or do you pay per episode? Or
there is the summer one, the summer bonus, which was kind of a bundle. I think it's the first 3, or I think it might just be the second and the third one. But no, you pay for them individually.
Okay.
But obviously there is the retail release coming out in January, which you could just pay for in one go.
So there's no season pass sort of style?
No
approach?
season pass.
Oh well, that's interesting. That's unusual as well, because normally even with things like the Telltale games, they do a bundle buy that you buy up front. So I think I bought the Game of Thrones bundle, which I haven't played any of yet. But I bought the bundle, and then in fact those might be games that you might enjoy, Chris. So the Telltale game series, to go slightly off topic, are a little more point-and-click adventures. So there's not any real gaming skill required. There's very few interactions where you've got.
I think there might be some button mashing.
Yeah, a little bit, but a lot of it's about making decisions. And the whole point of the episodes is that you make a different decision. You could make a different decision twice, make an effect of a different outcome. So you can steer how your story goes to an extent. It's not a huge impact on the final outcome, but you do get a sort of decision. They do a Walking Dead. There's 2 Walking Dead seasons. There's a few others that I'm less interested in, but Game of Thrones you might be interested in. It's a unique story.
Was there a Michonne Walking Dead as well? So there was a Michonne specific Walking Dead Telltale game.
They've had season 1 and season 2, and they're working on season 3. There might have been another one in between.
Pretty
they're
sure
actually in the process of doing another one you'd like. Currently on episode 2, I think, is Telltale's Batman.
Oh yes,
So they've done their own Batman game, which is supposed to be really interesting as well. So perhaps that's something we should get Chris on stream for, and we'll play through them. I've got them on my console at home, so you're more than welcome to come and feature and do a bit of streaming yourself. Cool. Is there anything else about Hitman you wanted to mention, or was that?
It depends if you want me to go on to my next bit, which is kind of my next topic, which is kind of related to Hitman in a way. I can just roll that off.
You might as well now. You've introduced it.
It's basically about Final Fantasy VII, the remake. Obviously, if you listen to the first podcast, you know that's one of my favourite games ever. And basically, it's just when it was announced, pretty much a year ago now, it was they released it to say that it was going to be not episodic as such, but it was going to be released in segments, and it was a bit ambiguous at the time. As to whether it was actually going to be an episodic content or not, and it still is, because obviously we still don't know anything about it because it's still being made. But interestingly enough, it was showcased at PlayStation Experience back in 2015. Nothing was mentioned about it, just that it was being done. And then at E3 2016, we got the little video. And oh no, sorry, what was I saying? Yeah, nothing's been mentioned for a year now, and it was a year to the day that PlayStation Experience released the video, and we've actually got PlayStation Experience coming up on December the 3rd. So I've just got my fingers crossed that hopefully we'll get to some more information about Final Fantasy VII, the remake, because I want to know more about it.
Do you think they've possibly gone quiet because Final Fantasy 15 is about to come out and they don't want to distract from the impending release of that? Because if they're talking about
possibly, yeah,
probably the most loved Final Fantasy game in the franchise, or one of, then is talking about that too much distracting from the brand new one that's taken 10 years to make?
It could be, yeah, that's very true.
And that's now out in December itself, isn't it? Or is it November?
November.
So actually, yeah, you might be right. Then if it's after that release, maybe they will bring that up and talk about it.
They might give us another tease. I can.
Does it concern you that they're actually they've talked quite openly about the fact that the gameplay will not be the same as it was in the original Final Fantasy VII?
Well, I kind of figured that would happen because of how especially the last few Final Fantasies have sort of geared towards that way. So I think 13, although it was turn-based, it was turn-based in a weird sort of way. It wasn't strictly turn-based, and obviously 15 is not turn-based in the slightest. And
do you think though that retelling the story in a new way is going to keep?
I don't think they said they're going to retell the story. The story's going to be exactly the same, but with little bits added in. From what I read,
they've sort of alluded to the fact that the whole point of breaking it down to chunks is that they can do more, isn't there? They can tell you more.
Yeah.
But what I mean is he's retelling the story but using a different game mechanic. What you want, or is part of the love that you have for that game, the game mechanic?
I'm not going to lie and say that I don't mind. I'd prefer it to be the same mechanic. But I'm also interested in the way that I could sort of use Cloud as if I was in the Advent Children film. So it's kind of a bit of both. It's a bit of apprehension, but a bit of optimism in a way. I'd prefer if it was to go back the way it was, but I can see why they're going a different way with it because of how games have progressed since then. But yeah, that's a bit of an ambiguous answer.
Yeah, very much on the fence then.
Yes,
not committing. I'm going to push you every 2 weeks to see if you'll go in one direction or the other then. That will be my new challenge, and I will have forgotten that by the time the next podcast comes around, so don't hold me to it.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay then, as soon as you've done 2 in a row now, and you've exhausted your list of things to talk about, I'm going to do one of mine, because it's only fair. So I said earlier I've been playing FIFA 17 this week on Early Access. We actually did a bit of it on stream. In fact, I've only played it on stream, and I've tried a couple of the modes out. So I started off and dabbled with the newest mode in FIFA 17, which is their main talking point. And the one thing I think, generally speaking, the reviewers of both that and PES have praised FIFA for and almost encourage you to buy it because of, which is the story mode called The Journey. So, Chris, I think you actually might enjoy this. So The Journey is a rags to riches story. You start off as a guy called Alex Hunter. And he's a young lad on a football field with his mates in a sort of organised youth league, and you stick a penalty away in a final to win the match. And then the side of that, they're telling you, or they're showing you very early on that he's got an interesting relationship with his dad.
Does he have Port and Lucasade the night before
he doesn't,
a match?
No, he's not Jamie Vardy.
It feels like it's
I have read that news. No, so he basically it's a bit of an EastEnders style story. He's got his mum and dad are in it. His dad's a bit of an arse by the looks of it, although I haven't got far enough in to know. His granddad used to be a famous footballer and scored a goal in an FA Cup final back in the day. I think his dad had a failed football career through injury or something. It was cut short, and Alex is on the rise. So the next thing you do is jump 8 years forward, and you're having trials at, I think it's the Burton Academy. Is it in Burton? Is that where they have the FA
England,
Academy?
Yeah. So
you're there. Basically, it's the dropouts trial. So it's all the clubs who've let the players go.
Oh, awesome!
So if you've heard of that, if any clubs let their players go, they go for these sort of second chance trials, basically, where other scouts will go and pick them up from other clubs, basically. So that's the principle. And then at the end of the trials, you've had a successful trials, you kind of do bits of that in the game, and then you're given an option of which Premier League club you want to sign for. And you can pick any of the 20 Premier League clubs, basically. But each one comes with its own challenges. So the bigger the club, the less game time you're likely to get, and the more difficult it will be to break into the first team. But the idea is that you pick your favourite club or the club you want to start your journey on, and you go from there. But then it's got really interesting little story segments built into it. So you don't, at the beginning, you're not playing full games. You kind of come in on as a sub with a set of tasks to impress the manager, and they'll be based around keeping your average score at a certain height, score a goal, play a part in the winning the match, whatever it might be. And the better you do, the better your overall performance is, and your character levels up, and you can apply skill points to earn traits. And then you have a sort of Mass Effect style story layered in between. So between matches and between these activities, you'll do things like get questions from the media, or you'll see the story starting to build with your granddad and this guy you've come through the youth academies with who conveniently signed for the same club you did on the same day and all that. So there's a story building in the background. I haven't got very far on it. On the early access trial, they only let you get about 3 or 4 iterations into the game. There's obviously a lot more to play out the season.
Which team did you pick?
I picked West Ham.
Okay.
It showed you with each of the clubs the expected target for that club. I was going to go Liverpool, but then they had win the league as their target, I think it was, and I was like, nah, I'm not going to get any game time. So I picked West Ham on the basis that they had a nice big stadium, which I thought would be fun to play in. Because you play it from, you don't play your typical football view. The default camera, if you leave it that way, is behind the player.
Yeah. So
it's very much sort of in amongst the action. You can't see what's going on behind you. It's a really interesting viewpoint to play from, but you do get more of that feel of the atmosphere. So I picked them, thought they had a few good players, so I fancied that journey. And being a Blues fan as well, the chance to go and play for David Sullivan and David Gold was too much to resist. But it's genuinely really good. I think I haven't got very far into it, as I say, but I have heard a lot of people talk about how the story progresses, and it does get really interesting. And you do, by all accounts, get quite attached to this guy. And I must admit, I found even in just the first few games, my interest in the whole story is probably the most interested I've been in a story from a game for quite a long time, which sounds stupid because it's just football, like it's just a typical rags to riches tale, but you get to play it out, and because of those Mass Effect interactions where you get asked a question or you get an opportunity to react in a certain way, you can choose a fiery response, and you can make your character, you can build this little bar up to make your character quite fiery. You can be quite chilled out and cool about it, and again you go the other way and you become a more cool character, or you can choose the balanced answer, which doesn't really affect your overall rating either way, but you're basically shaping this guy, and it's really, really interesting. So really liking the journey. We also started a pro club. So if you're in FIFA 17 and you play pro clubs, we've actually got a pro club and we're looking for players, so come and join us. But for Chris's benefit, pro clubs is where you create yourself, or your own virtual character, and then you develop yourself by playing in a team. So we've created the boss battle team, and we've got a few players playing in that now, so we're looking for more players. And then I've been playing the inevitable, the money machine, which is the ultimate team mode. So started pulling some packs and getting players and assembling my dream team already. So looking good so far. Really enjoying it as a game. I think the Frostbite engine, which they've rebuilt the game in from the ground up this time round, looks fantastic. Visually, really, really impressive. The likenesses of the players, the top players, obviously, are really good. I don't imagine any of the Birmingham City players are truly modelled on themselves, but it looks good. And I think just to end that sort of comment from me about FIFA, it's just to say that Chris, we're going to get you on stream, I do believe, with a bit of FIFA and PES to do a comparison video from a non-gamer's view of the games.
Non-biased.
As a football loving, non-biased purist, to see what you think of the two games. So I'm looking forward to that.
How far did you get on the journey then?
No further than on the stream. I think it was about. I've
never seen the journey on the stream.
Okay, I did a couple of. I think I did the trials, picked my club, and did a couple of matches for the manager. And
then ironically, I think you got out on loan.
Did you really? Oh, okay, that was very good. That was very good. Did something. Don't ruin it for me.
No, that's all I asked.
You might go to Villa on loan.
This is Carl all over ruining stories. Okay, cool. So in that case, as you blew your wad early on, Carl, and you've done all of your bits, then we've got Chris's feature. Now, this is going to be a regular feature for Chris.
It certainly is.
So we've got a little jingle for Chris. So this is Chris's movie review.
Chris has been to the cinema and seen at least one movie. But what was it? And what did he think of it? This is Chris's movie review.
So this week I saw a film you've probably heard a little bit about, or possibly seen some of the trailers for. So it's called The Girl with All the Gifts, or The Girl with the Gifts. Might be misquoting slightly there.
I think you were right. I think it's The Girl with All the Gifts.
Okay, that's good. It has a bit more authority in terms of my review now. I've called it by the right topic. So it's a zombie movie, and I must admit, if it hadn't have been for the sort of critical buzz around this film, on the basis alone that it's a zombie movie, I wouldn't have bothered, because personally I kind of feel like it's been overdone. However, it's a really fresh twist take on it. It's very unique, so I'm not going to. My review's hopefully spoiler free. Well, I certainly believe
see it next week.
It's very, very vague, but gives you a flavour of what I thought about it. So, it's a British film. It's got a very, very impressive cast, and the thing I liked about it is it's got the likes of Glenn Close, Gemma Arterton, Paddy Considine. And then a child actor who's an absolute revelation. I forget her name. I really should have noted it down in my notes, but the child actor's fantastic.
She's an absolute revelation.
Yeah,
didn't bother to write her name.
No, but she's very, very good, and she figuratively and literally at times carries the film on her shoulders. And again, I kind of mentioned last week how child actors can be either really good or they're distracting and annoying, and it's very much the former. You very much buy into the character and empathise with the character, which is, as a central lead, is quite impressive. And personally speaking, I was a big fan of The Walking Dead, but I kind of gave up about a season and a half ago, albeit I've heard it's worth getting back into from recent events at the very end of the last season. But I kind of felt it was getting a bit samey in terms of going in the same direction. They find strangers.
I think it kind of lags for a bit. You get mid-season into a season, and it's just like, you just get to the crescendo already, because you know it's coming and it's going to be really good. But it's just a case of you've got to get there. So
despite that, and despite how many episodes of walkers, as they're called in this, lumbering around, it was I quite liked the way they did the zombies in this film. I thought it was still broadly the same characterisation, I guess, but just subtle differences, and I liked it. I thought it was quite good. And also, it reminded me the fact that it had a child actor that wasn't annoying, of The Walking Dead, and for me, the most annoying pronunciation of a name in a TV show. And this is very relevant to one of you guys, and you'll know what's coming. Yeah. Carl, which is the most annoying pronunciation of a name I can possibly think of, and it's said a lot in that show. So it was really nice not to have walkers, as they call it in The Walking Dead, in the scene, and also Andrew Lincoln's character going Carl, because it's really annoying. And that's pretty much
say there though. So
yeah, I guess he's right. It's just too many U's in the pronunciation for my liking. But that's pretty much my review. You're going to push me for a star rating?
You kind of need to if you're going to end it as a
review. Well, the reason
you need a scoring system.
The reason I was hesitant is because I'm going to give it 4, and it's going to look like I gave everything 4. But
you've only done 2 so far, so you can't give everything
100%. So it was really good, without being not one of the best films I've ever seen. But it was
without being a dark night.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I'm looking to go into that next week, so maybe I'll give a different bit of feedback on it when we do the next podcast. But I'm looking forward to it.
Built it too much.
I had no interest in it until I saw an article which, again, I guess like you, with critical praise, it said that it was one of the best zombie movies for a long time.
Yeah.
And up there with the likes of George Romero's classics back in the day. So that was enough for me to make me interested. So I'm going to go and have a look.
Yeah, I'll be intrigued to see what you think.
I've seen far too many big movie blockbusters this year, either at the cinema or after the fact, which have been massively disappointing. So I'm looking forward to something a little more offbeat, I guess, without the CGI budget that perhaps comes with the likes of X-Men Apocalypse and
It's interesting you say that, actually, because with the Cineworld card, I completely agree. I feel like I've got my value this year in terms of sheer volume of films I've seen. But I don't feel like I've got great value in terms of how many have been really good, especially the bigger ones, Civil War being the exception. But the last 2 I've seen have started to make up for that. So Hell or High Water and this one, both I had minimal preconceptions and were low budget and really good.
Yeah, I must admit, having not got the Cineworld card anymore, not doing those regular trips and being more choosy about what I go and see, I'm picking badly at the moment. and I'm going for the obvious summer blockbusters, and they're disappointing. I wouldn't have a massive problem with the X-Men film, but it was okay, it was decent. But like all the X-Men films, it hasn't quite, with the exception of the first couple, obviously, going right back, it hasn't really got to the levels that some of the Marvel stuff's got to. There are forgettable Marvel movies, I think we all agree that Thor 2 and stuff perhaps not the greatest, and there's a few others in that bracket, but yeah, I mean, I think you compare the movies this year, Batman vs Superman, just poor, X-Men Apocalypse, average, Civil War, the best of the three, and probably one of the better Marvel ones recently.
I think it was only really Deadpool that's changed things, hasn't it, really?
Yeah.
In that sort of regard.
Deadpool, but it's a different take on that genre. I'm I've got high hopes with Doctor Strange as well. I'm really looking forward to that, so looking forward to getting that one in. So, on to my other talking point then. I wanted to talk about the PSVR, which, before we even say anything else, should we ask Chris what we think that is?
It sounds like it should be in a hospital, but I'm thinking
you said wrong. VR, not ER.
It still sounds like electrical.
Okay, so we will 100% be getting Chris in one of these when it comes.
I've guessed what it is now.
The PlayStation VR virtual reality headset is due out on the 13th of October. We are hoping to have one to unbox and review. It's been pre-ordered since March, so as long as Amazon come through, then that should be all good. It does concern me that you can still pre-order them on Amazon's website, despite the fact that, according to PlayStation, all pre-orders are fully taken. So I'm a little worried that Amazon are just taking orders they can't fulfill, but we'll see.
Sounds like Amazon.
I've never had the problem with Amazon personally, but I don't know. It just worries me a little bit that PlayStation is saying all pre-orders are done, but Amazon is still letting you pre-order today and still claiming to deliver it on the 13th when it's released. So we'll see. Hopefully I'll get mine. I did pre-order it a long time ago. We'll definitely be doing an unboxing. We're playing it live on stream as well. It's for Chris, I'm assuming you know nothing about the PSVR.
That'd be accurate.
Fair enough. Do you remember your experience of the Oculus Rift?
Yes.
At the game show a couple of years ago.
Sort of a video somewhere.
So you experienced VR to an extent. That was a dev kit. The Oculus Rift has since released. It released in March this year. Quite expensive. It's about £800, I think, for the headset. I might be wrong, but it's £600. Maybe it's £600, and you need a high-end PC to run it. So it's quite expensive to get into.
Yeah.
HTC have also released one called the Vive, which is generally considered to be the top end of the VR headsets, but that'll run you £800-900 plus a top-end PC. So you're talking probably about £1,500 to £2,000 to get into this if you've got nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas the PSVR is £350, and all you need is a PlayStation 4 to run it, which will run you £250 now. Mm-hmm. So as long as you've got those devices, you can get in at almost half the price, or easily half the price. So you expect lower specs, which it is. General feedback amongst the community of people who've tested them, and I have to say I haven't, is that it is one of the most comfortable of the three headsets, except in the fact that it's the lowest spec, but comfort-wise, it's supposed to be light and easy to wear, and easy to adjust, which is good. I'm really interested in it. I can't wait for it to come out. I'm fully expecting it not to be the finished article. It's an early adopter thing for me again, getting on the ground and having a go and accepting the fact that I might be throwing away a bit of money here and having to replace something in the longer term. But I like to try these things out and give it a whirl. There's a few things about it that interest me, and I'll go through some of the games that are coming out on release in a second. But one of the things to mention with the headset is that you can use it for non-VR purposes as well, which sounds a little odd. So when you put the headset on, you can play your normal PS4 games and you can watch your movies in effectively a cinematic mode. And the largest possible setting is the equivalent of sitting 2.5 metres away, I think it is, or 5 metres away, from a 226-inch screen. So it's basically like being at the cinema. So when you're in the headset, the game you're playing is on a screen that feels as big as a cinema screen.
I think you can watch films on the Vive as well, from what I've
I think you can in all of them. I'm sure you can in all of them. But the PSVR is probably the most unique of the three because it's really only on a games console. So whereas the HTC Vive and the Oculus are both connected to a PC, you can do so much more with that. The PlayStation VR is a bit restricted, so the extra features are nice to have. So the cinematic mode is really interesting as well, just to try things out, because VR is going to require purchasing the specific VR games. Onto the games, there's quite a lot of stuff coming on release. I had listed a lot of them here, but I think I'm just going to pick out the ones of interest. So there's a few for me, and what interests me the most about this is the wildly different prices for some of these games. So one that may interest you, Chris, is Batman Arkham VR. So you get to be the Batman. So far, the demo that everyone has seen and has been well published is about you being in the mansion, talking to your butler, making your way down to the Batcave, and gearing up as Batman, putting on the mask, and looking at yourself as Batman. And wherever you move your head, the mirrored head follows. So that sounds quite interesting. Generally, everyone seems to really like it. A lot of the games journalists have been really positive about that. And the full game is £15, so not significant amount of money really when you consider a normal sort of AAA title's £40, £45, depending on where you buy it. So £15 seems good. It probably means it's a very small game, and no one really knows what the full game actually does beyond getting out of the Batcave. But for that Batcave experience alone, and to test out your new headset, your new hardware, it's probably worth an investment. So I'll be looking at that. One of the ones that interested me, and I've seen a bit of footage of this, is one called Eagle Flight. So Eagle Flight's by Ubisoft. It's a first-person bird game, which has got to be a first, I think. It's a stylised version of Paris that you play in, but effectively it's a team match. So you team up with other eagles. I don't know how many eagles you've ever seen flying over Paris, but whatever. So you team with a team of eagles to fight against another team of eagles, and there's game modes like Hunt the Egg and things like that you do. And so it's all about you flying around as an eagle, which sounds interesting. I don't think there's a single player element to it, and that's £55 on Amazon at the moment. It just seems a bit bonkers in terms of the price difference. I'd rather be Batman than an eagle, even if the eagle game is a fully fleshed out game. And for that price difference, I'm put off, to be honest, because that seems like an awful lot of money for something I know I'm not going to get a massive amount of use out of. So probably going to give that a miss. There's lots of other stuff in between, like Battlezone, which is a sort of tank-based game. Eve Valkyrie is another flying combat game. There's lots of other sort of novelty games as well as some other bigger brand ones. But a couple of others I'm interested in. We've got PlayStation VR Worlds, which kind of brands itself as an experience, really, package. So there's, I think, 6 experiences in that, all a bit different. The few that really stood out to me were there's a heist mode where you play the sort of co-driver in a getaway. So you're ploughing down a motorway in a car next to your getaway driver. You've got a gun, and you've got to shoot at the FBI that's chasing you, the cops.
Okay.
So you imagine that you're in that passenger seat. Wherever you turn your head, you see the things that would be relative to where you are turning your head. So you look to the right, you see your co-driver. You look to the left, you're looking out the window, you're shooting. So I like the idea of that. Could be quite immersive. There's a Shark Tank experience or an underwater experience. I'm not sure if it's in a Shark Tank or not, but effectively you're under the sea and there's sharks are involved, which could be quite fun. There's Street Luge, which looks quite good, and a couple of other bits that interested me there. That's actually priced at, I think it was £25 on Amazon. So that feels more reasonable. That might be something I'll look to pre-order. You've got something called Riggs, Mechanised Combat League, which is a kind of an esports mech fighting game. That one's in at around £40. Again, that's received a lot of praise, although a few people have reported a bit of motion sickness on that one.
I think you're going to get motion sickness through a lot of them, aren't you, really?
Well, a lot of the feedback at the moment is that the 3 headsets don't cause that. The final release versions aren't causing that for a lot of people. The dev ones we tried, I think most of us came away with some sort of headache or ill feeling. I had a banging headache after trying that.
I've seen a few people on YouTube using them, and a lot of them have had to take pauses because of motion sickness. Yeah, I think it's something you get used to.
Former dev kits, I don't think that's the full releases. That's not what I've read a lot about, but okay.
I think it's a case you get used to.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. We get to try it out hopefully in a couple of weeks. One I was really like the look of, well, I love this game back on the PS2, was Res Infinite. So Res has been redone. Res fits really nicely with a VR game. So Res, for Chris's benefit, is a music synthesizer game, all a little bit trippy in what already looks like a traditional, old-fashioned VR concept. That whole polygon, everyone's a Tron style kind of game. Yeah. So they've redone that so you can be all played in VR, and they've also created a VR-specific experience within it where you can move more freely because the whole game is kind of played on rails. So that's all the games that are coming out and released that I'm interested in. There's a whole load of others, and you can find those online. There's a few other titles that I'm interested in, and a couple that I've picked out which I think, Carl, you'll be interested in. So the first one, and Chris, you might even like this as well, is Star Wars Rogue One X-Wing. Cool. So there is an experience which you can play.
Do you get to be Darth Vader?
No.
I was going to say, because that'd be really apt if you had the headset and you were Darth Vader, wouldn't it?
It's not a helmet. Well, it is, you could describe it as a helmet. So this is a bit different. So this is a game, an experience, fully, they fully admit it's not a full game, but it's baked into a full release. So it's linked to Star Wars Battlefront. So I'm in a bit of a quandary now because I've got Battlefront on the Xbox and I don't play it on the Xbox, but it's a good game, I like it, I just don't play it. do I want to rebuy it on the PlayStation 4 in order to experience the X-Wing experience? So knowingly buying a game I'm only going to play for that purpose, for me it's going to come down to price. But I like that idea. So I like the fact that games are going to release, even if they don't have a full VR game, it's going to have an experience you can play.
Yeah.
Tethered to that is something I have no interest in, which is the Final Fantasy 15 VR experience, which quite frankly looks really poor and bizarre and ill-conceived. So the experience that I've seen the demo of, you take the role of one of the guys in that sort of four-man team, but not the main character, it's the blonde kid. And the battle that was in the demo that I think you had access to, Carl, the pre-release demo that came with your...
I think I only went up to the one with the boss.
Yeah, so that boss fight I've seen the video of. So in that boss fight, you can play that in VR, but you're basically limited to the sort of teleport move that lets you hop around the map.
Yes.
And shooting a gun.
Okay.
When you move, because there's no movement involved, it's all headset, looking around, you're stationary, so you can kind of zip around the map and shoot, but you can't do anything else. It looks really weird. I don't get it, and that's a game I don't really understand why they've done that, but I imagine it's Sony going to Square Enix and going, please do something for the VR headset, and they went, okay then.
Well, it's kind of made the decision on what console to get it for then.
Yeah, so we can try that out. I don't know what it'll be like. And a game that is unusually going to be a full release on normal consoles, but also playable fully in VR, is Resident Evil 7. So Resi 7 will be playable on VR, completely playable in VR, but also completely playable in standard mode.
Okay.
So you can sort of play it to a certain point. If it's all getting a bit too much for you, take the headset off and carry on playing on your TV.
Well, that's quite
Yeah, so
clever,
all games will be playable in VR.
That's quite clever.
A couple of things I noticed that look quite interesting. There's a game called Farpoint, which is a sci-fi game.
Okay.
And that's going to be using the new gun peripheral that's coming with the VR headsets. So it looks like a gun with a giant PlayStation Move ball on the end.
Oh, yes.
But it tracks where you're going and what you're doing and where you're shooting, and you can sort of turn the gun in real time and look at the gun, and it mirrors your movements, which seems quite cool.
Okay.
So that looks quite interesting. Gran Turismo Sport is going to have support for VR, but they haven't said what that means. So is that the whole game playable? Well, yeah. Is it playable in VR the whole thing, or is it going to be an experience? So they've not really been very clear. One that you'll definitely like the idea of, and again they haven't been clear on what this is, harks back to your conversation earlier actually, is Ace Combat. Okay. So Ace Combat's coming to PSVR in some capacity, but we don't know what that looks like.
Interesting.
And then Tomb Raider Experience, so the new Tomb Raider re-release. Again, I won't be experiencing this, but you can walk around Lara Croft's manor.
Okay.
I don't know why you want to do that. And then the last one I picked up on here, which I think is really odd, and I cannot say how this is going to work, Tekken 7 with PSVR support. Okay. So a fighting game, I don't know how that's going to work, but interesting to see how they do that.
Yeah.
An interesting concept.
You might be like Uncharted where you do it first person. I can't see how doing Horong's kicks and stuff would work in VR.
I don't really get it, but
Ace Combat, that seems interesting. Because there's not an Ace Combat come out on the PlayStation since...
Well, I think this is coming out on both. I think it's going to have PSVR support.
Yeah.
So it's not only a PSVR game.
Because there hasn't been an Ace Combat that I know of that came out on the PS3. The last one was on the PS2. I think there might have been one that came out on the 360.
It's an obvious one, I think, to resurrect for this, isn't it? I mean, natural. I mean, you can imagine that could be an amazing experience if they get it right.
So I've seen a few people use the HTC Vive for like rally games and a lot of racing games and stuff.
That's what I think GT Sport makes perfect sense.
I think it does for a lot of racing games.
You can imagine the first-person view being so much more usable with the headset,
and
so much more immersive.
Definitely.
That could be really cool.
Because
I saw it being used with the wheel. I think IGN did a video this week actually with all their guys playing. It might have been the Vive or the Oculus, I can't remember, on a driving game, and it looked amazing. Looked really good.
Was it Dirt Rally?
Yeah, it might well have been.
Yeah. There's a guy that I'll follow on Twitch, and he does a lot of dirt rally stuff, and he's literally got a whole rig of a seat and steering wheel and handbrake and everything.
I can imagine that being a really cool experience.
He uses a headset for that, or he has recently, and it does. That was the one thing that I don't like with car games. When you're in the cockpit view, is you don't feel like you're in a cockpit view. You just feel like you're in a constrained view, and you can't actually see. Like you can't tell if something's overtaking you.
Yeah.
You can't look
around. You've got to use the right stick to look, and that throws you off what you're doing. And
counterintuitive when it comes to driving games. That was one of the things that I liked about VR was the integration to racing games.
One of the best experiences I think I've had with the driving game was the PS3 3 that we had the Logitech wheel for. The official place, the GT.
No, I think it's PS2.
Was it PS2? Is that far back?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
I
yeah,
thought
I
I had a
remember that.
PS3 recently.
I remember that being a fantastic driving
Yeah,
experience
yeah.
because that wheel had the resistance and everything built in.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
really good fun in the rally games when when the corner fought you back, the wheel really did push
Yeah,
you.
and I think they've grown since then as well. Obviously, you can get cheap ones, but yeah, I think I do want to get a wheel actually because I've got Dirt Rally. But I've just not really played. It's like the Dark Souls. They say it's like Dark Souls of racing games or rally games because it's so unforgiving.
purists, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm looking forward to playing that.
So up now is the quiz, which we started last week, and we'll be carrying over the scores over the next few weeks. At some point, I'll come up with a prize or an incentive or a reason to care, but for now, just trust me, it's worth doing. After last week, Carl, you're on 2 points. Chris, you are on 1 point. I have 3 questions for you again. Again, one with the game, one with the TV, and one with the movie theme. I would like you to write your answers down.
Okay.
Or make a note of them somehow on your devices, and then I'll ask you for your answers just to make sure that it's fair. All of these are according to Wikipedia, so I took them all from Wikipedia. So blame that if they're wrong. So we'll start with question number 1, which is your games related question.
Yeah.
And according to Wikipedia, what is the second best selling console ever? And I'm going to give you the names of the 4 choices in a moment. So let's be clear here. It's the second best selling console ever. Is it A, the Nintendo DS, B, the PlayStation 2, C, the Nintendo Game Boy, or D, the Xbox 360? So second best selling console ever, Nintendo DS, PlayStation 2, Nintendo Game Boy, or the Xbox 360? Know your answer. The second question.
Hang on, I need to think of that one. Give us the 4 again.
Mega Drive, Carl.
Nintendo DS, PlayStation 2, Nintendo Game Boy, Xbox 360.
You should get half a point max from that.
It's second best.
Yeah, I'm going to move on because it's
Okay.
listening to you think is.
Yeah. Go on.
So-
I've written something down.
According to Wikipedia, what is the highest grossing film adjusted for inflation? Is it B? A even, that makes sense. Let's try A. Is it A, Avatar? Is it B, Star Wars? Is it C, Gone with the Wind? Is it D, Titanic?
Adjusted with inflation.
Highest grossest film adjusted for inflation. Avatar, Star Wars, Gone with the Wind, Titanic. And the third one, according to Wikipedia, who is or was the second best paid prime time actor or actress? So, according to Wikipedia, who is or was the second best paid prime time actor or actress? Is it A, Jim Parson, also known as Sheldon Cooper? Is it B, Charlie Sheen's Charlie Harper? Is it C, Kelsey Grammer, Frasier? Or is it D, Ray Romano from Everybody Loves Raymond? So, who is the second best paid primetime actor or actress? And granted, there are no actresses in there. Jim Parsons as Sheldon Cooper, Charlie Sheen as Charlie Harper, Kelsey Grammer as Frasier, or Ray Romano as Raymond? Put an answer down?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll go for question number 1, and I'm going to come to you, Chris, first. Second best selling console ever.
I've gone for Game Boy.
Game Boy. Carl has gone for.
I went for 360, but my girlfriend used the DS.
Carl for 360 and pulled a face at Chris's Game Boy. Neither of you are right. It is in fact the DS.
I thought it would be the DS.
The top selling was the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
Shifted around 155 million units. The Nintendo DS, 154 million units. The Nintendo Game Boy was 118 million
That was
units.
around a long time, isn't
And the
it?
360, 84 million units. So 360 was quite far.
You
So
You-
I should get
you
half
gotta
a
take
point
into-
for that then, because mine was higher than.
You got to take into account the
Right.
Japanese
No.
market. Yeah.
No.
So, okay, so that no one got that one right. So the second one is the highest grossing film adjusted for inflation. Carl.
Oh, Star Wars.
Star Wars.
I've gone with Gone with the Wind.
Chris has gone for Gone with the Wind. It is in fact Gone with the Wind.
Damn it.
Gone with the Wind, $3.4 billion. Corrected. Star Wars, $2.8 billion. Avatar, $3 billion. Titanic, $2.5. So all significant amounts of money, but Gone with the Wind. So that's 1 to you, Chris, 0 to you, Carl. And the last question is the one around the second best paid primetime actor, Chris.
I feel like it's wrong now. I've gone with Jim Parsons.
No, he's number 1. I know that. Well, I was told that.
I thought Charlie Sheen was. There we go.
No, I went with Charlie Sheen.
You're both wrong. Charlie Sheen, according to Wikipedia, at least, is the highest paid.
I think Jim Parsons is at the moment.
At £1.8 million per episode.
Oh, okay.
Sheldon Cooper or Jim Parsons at £1 million per episode is the lowest of the 4.
All right.
Kelsey Grammer, before he finished, was £1.6 million an episode. And the right answer was Ray Romano at £1.7 million an episode.
Really? Yeah. So Jim Parsons is the only one that's still going. That's what confused me, I think. Because I thought it was maybe doing it as in now sort of thing. But, I get you.
Yeah, so
not
particularly good quiz for either of you. Granted, the questions were a bit tricky.
I've drawn them all there.
I'm going to blame Wikipedia.
It's 2-2 now. If you'd like to submit a question for us to help me out with this, because I do put this quiz together myself, you can do so by emailing bossbattlenetwork@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at bossbattlenet. Just make sure you give us your question for multiple choice answers and let me know which is the correct one, so I haven't got to try and work it out for myself. But that was our quiz for this week. So 2-2 now on scores for the combined week, so all to play for next time out. So we're drawing to an end, so finally I think we'll just do a quick round table. What are you playing or watching next couple of weeks? Chris.
So, I've actually like to take this opportunity to extend an invite to both of you now. So, my next cinema trip is already earmarked. It's a film I think you'll both take a lot of pleasure in. It's 150 minutes in running time, so it's only 2.5 hours. It's a documentary by the makers of Senna, the famous racing driver, obviously, and also the Amy Winehouse, I think just called Amy, documentary, and it's on the band Oasis, charting the time of their 1994 to 1996 peak, ending in Nebworth, where over 1 million people applied for tickets, and 250,000 people a night saw them over 2 nights, and they were just about the biggest thing in the planet at that point.
Should we point out to everyone listening that you absolutely love Oasis?
And we don't.
Which is why you would go and see something like this.
Or if you had an interest in 90s culture, because, a big part of it. But yes, I think it's fair to say you need to probably be a fan as a prerequisite, and me being a massive fan makes me pretty excited. It's combining 2 of my favourite things in the world, a cinema trip and my favourite band. So
I'll tell you what, Chris, I will go with you if you pay me £100.
Oh, I was just about to say, I'd pay Sydney World things. You get it free anyway.
Get your,
you have to pay me.
I'll get your meal deals.
I'll buy you pick a mix. I'll buy you pick a mix.
You'd have to buy me all the pick and mix.
It's got to get through 2.5 hours of running time. But anyway, I'll post a full review in the next podcast for your pleasure.
You're on holiday, aren't you? What a shame.
Brilliant. Okay, so
I'll preview it now. It's 5 stars.
You're watching 2.5 hours of Oasis. Carl, what are you doing the next couple of weeks?
I will be watching Luke Cage and probably playing a little bit more NBA, and I will probably stream a lot of that, and I will also be playing Hitman. But yeah, Luke Cage and Narcos as well. Luke Cage I can't wait for.
I'm going to be trying to complete Jessica Jones. I'm 4 episodes in now. I've managed 1 whole episode since we last talked.
You're 2 ahead of me.
So that'll be my sort of TV viewing, probably limited to that. Oh, and Great British Bake Off, obviously, because the wife says so. And then game-wise, so we've got, Gears of War 4 have snuck out before the next podcast. It might just about have made it out by the 11th. Yeah, so it will have. Yeah. So Gears of War 4, that'll have landed by then. We'll be streaming lots of that. I think we're going to do a bit of Gears of War 3 Horde to build up to that on stream, so keep an eye out for that if you're interested, or if you want to join us. FIFA will be on my list as well to continue playing, and then I think by the time the next one comes out, we might literally just have had the PSVR headset, all being well, so that will also be on the list of things to play. So quite a lot going on for me in the next couple of weeks, but yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that's the end of the episode then. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you found it interesting. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time, but for me, it's goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.